Hi! Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and happy Halloween! I am cutting it pretty close, like the day before Halloween, but I'll be damned, I wanted a video out before Halloween and I am doing it. In this video, we are going to be making Mothman, the very creepy cryptid from West Virginia in Point Pleasant, who is just a big moth bird-looking creature with gigantic red eyeballs, and he stares at you from the trees and from bridges that he likes to topple over in his spare time. So that is who we're going to be making today. Now, I will say, I wanted to do like a whole lot more with Halloween season. I just realized that I am but one person and there is a very finite time. Only 31 days, and that is not enough time to make Halloween art dolls to sell and then Halloween videos. I kind of messed up both. Like, I started Halloween art dolls and then was like, I'm gonna push these to November and I'm gonna start on a Halloween video, but I started already too late. So, cut it a little bit close. But I'm saying all this because the rest of the year I am dubbing Halloween 2.0 and in December is Spookmas. Because dang it, I want Halloween stuff, and I want to make all the creatures that I had you guys voted on. Like, I know you guys want to see a Kelpie. I know, like, Manticore was on that list, Mothman was on that list, so we got Mothman. But, I need the spooky, okay? So just, like, humor me a little bit. It's just gonna be spooky for the rest. It's like the Nightmare Before Christmas, except no Christmas, just spook. So, I'm just telling you that that's what's gonna be happening. Anything else I want to talk about in this video? Doing Mothman, Spookmas. Is that it? I love you guys. I get a little love in there. Love you. Okay, let's just jump into it, I guess. I got nothing else to say. Let's go.
Guys, look at my fancy new background. I could be like all the miniaturist people who make really, really cool things. Alright, now the first step is usually to start sculpting the face, but I actually decided to make some glass eyes for Mr. Mothman because I wanted him to have a very cool gimmick later on. So I'm doing a few tests here and there to figure out what is going to give the best look for him. I know I want red eyes, obviously, but I wanted them to have like subtle differences, and so I had different ideas for that. I tried this color shift stuff since it, depending on what angle you looked at it, it would be a different color, but it ended up being a little bit too pink. Here I am trying some mica powders. I didn't have it in red. I did have it in orange, and I didn't want to do any other color like yellow because then I figured that might look a little bit too weird, and orange was the closest color. And it ended up looking pretty cool, but just forget everything that I'm doing here because what I ended up going with anyway was some UV resin. So I just took some of the, because that ended up having an even like better, brighter, shimmery type metallic look that I wanted, and so I ended up just putting the mica powders and some alcohol ink into the resin, and then I'm just dabbing that onto the cabochon and then curing that with a UV torch thing that I have, and that thing is a beast. You know, like, fun fact, I used to live in Arizona, and so I would actually go out in the middle of the night with that UV torch and find scorpions in my backyard. It's how I kept me and my dog safe from accidentally stepping on one. Now it is time for the normal first step, and that is going to be sculpting the head and feet. Now the first step in that process is going to be bulking up an aluminum foil in the general shape that I want. And I do this for a few important reasons. The first being that it is going to save me clay. Using aluminum foil as a base makes sure that I'm not using way too much clay. I'm not making the head too heavy so that it falls over from the wire armature later on. It also helps to make sure that the clay that I am using is going to bake more evenly in the oven, since it's going to be a lot thinner than normal than if it was just a thick bulk of clay. If you bake just a thick bulk, there is a chance that it is not going to bake fully in the oven, and like the center is still not going to be like absolutely cured, so it could crack. So Using the foil is a very important step, and it just helps the whole process go a lot more smoothly. It's also even more important in this stage because I want Mothman to actually have light up eyes. I need that foil to act as a base for me so I can sculpt his head hollow, which was very difficult, let me tell you, but that it's even more important in this scenario. Yeah, so like I said, I do need his head to be hollow so that way I can fit some LEDs behind his eyes so that they get a very nice glowing effect. And that was like way too hard. I don't know, like some people do it and they just make it look so easy and they're just like, yes, you do a little bit of this, you do a little bit of that, and bam, hollow head. And I'm just like, no, it's not that easy, okay? The eyes kept sliding all over the place and they wouldn't sit still, and I still had to Dremel out some of the back because I used too much clay and I couldn't fit the LEDs in, and I'm just complaining here because it was messed up, but okay, rant over. But now I am just using Super Sculpey medium, and I'm just making little coils of clay and I'm wrapping it around the eyes and just trying to get a general shape of what I wanted. And that was rather difficult because I don't really know like what his like concrete form is, because there's many different depictions of him. So you best believe that I was using, what does the screen say, people? What does the screen say? References, people, references. I was using so many references. He just looks so many different. He looks so different depending on like who drew him or who claims they saw him and what he looks like. So I was just using pictures of like moths and insects and depictions of him and what people have drawn of fan art. And I just took a bunch of those and I smushed them together, and this is what I made. And my roommate absolutely adores him. I have mixed feelings about him because I wanted something creepy, y'all. I wanted something spooky for Halloween, but instead I got this adorable derpy looking fella who just wants a friend. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love him so much, but he's not the creepy guy I was going for. He looks like derpy cute. He looks like a little alien. But that just goes to show, like, sometimes things don't turn out the way you want and you kind of just go with the flow, and that's how art is sometimes. I could try later if I really want to make a spooky one, but you know, I kind of like how he is now, and so I'll just save the spooky times for another video. It's fine. Now, I did decide to do something a little bit different with the final steps of this sculpture. I decided to, I've seen everybody always do it, where they take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and they'll brush it over the sculpture before it goes into the oven, just to get rid of fingerprints and to kind of smooth out the details to make sure they're nice and wonderful. I don't know if it made that much of a difference, but I tried it anyway just to see what would happen, and you know, why not? Now, I will say, I did retain some of the spookies with his hands and his feet. I was still hoping and holding out for a creepy dude, so I was still like, yeah, no, his head will turn out creepy, it's fine. I'm just not gonna look at that right now, it's fine. We're gonna work on his hands and feet. And so I decided to, I didn't give him like full 5 fingers, I gave him 4 fingers because I think I just ran out of room on the little blob of clay I made, so I was like, well, you're getting 4 fingers now instead of 5. I'm not even going to try to be like, it's a design that I chose. No, I probably ran out of space and was like, I'm not making this wider. You're just going to get 4 fingers instead, buddy. So I'm just, I took a little blob of clay, and then I'm just taking little coils and I'm sticking them onto the edge of the little ball, and then I'm just like adding little indents where I feel like knuckles would be, and then just generally pushing and pulling clay until it looks like a finger. You know, I want to make it sound like, oh yes, I knew what I'm doing. I took this and I did this exact step, and then this is exactly how you get it. I know I kind of messed around with it until it looked cool, and then I was happy. And I did the same exact thing with his feet, and it was even weirder for his feet because I didn't know what to do. I kind of went between like bird and insect, because some people depicted him with bird feet, some people did insect feet, some people just kind of did blob fluffy things. And the fluffy things would have lended to the cute, so you know I was rebelling against that. So I gave him like a mix of like bird feet, but then I kind of textured it to look a little bit more on the insect side and just a little bit more creepy instead of just standard bird. So yeah, I mean, I hope that. I mean, right now he looks like Sesame Street feet. he over here looking like Big Bird. So he's just a weird dude all around. This is such a weird experience. I mean, it was different for me to do. I'm really glad that I did it because I'm so used to everything else that I always make, and it was just nice and something different. But because of that, I just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I put stuff together and things happen, guys. Enjoy the ride with me. Oh, I do want to mention for his claws that you see me making here, I am actually using cause clay, and that is a clay that once it is baked is still extremely flexible, and so for claws and things that are delicate, it is absolutely perfect for because it is less likely to break. And once everything is done, I bake it in the oven at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for roughly 30 to 40 minutes. I always forget to mention that, but that's what I bake them at. Now, normally when I make my sculptures, I leave the foil inside and I make a hole in that and I insert my armature into that and just secure it with hot glue. But in this case, I can't do that because I removed the aluminum foil to keep the head hollow. So what you see me doing here is I'm actually going to take some epoxy sculpt and I'm going to take my little ball and sockets there and I'm going to epoxy them to the back of the head plate and just angle it in a way that it'll still work for an armature, but it doesn't get too much in the way for when I want to add his LEDs later on. I hope that made sense. I feel like that made sense. Right, I'm just taking the epoxy and I'm putting the armature there because it has to go somewhere. he got to stand somehow. So that's what I decided to do. And I'm just making sure that it's nice and smooth and it blends into the baked clay as much as possible. I also ended up using it in like certain spots where I thought the head plate was a little too thin, just to make sure that it was a little bit more reinforced so that it never broke. Got this wire and this wire. I have an LED and an LED. Got, ew, that thing stinks. I got heat shrink. I got a battery. I got a battery casing. I got a switch.
Why are you talking if the audio isn't recording?
I got a helping hand. And I got this thing. Oh. And a lighter. Oh, wait. It's solder.
Are you recording sound?
Yes.
Did you lie to me?
Yes. Oh, wait, well, wire strippers. Based on that last clip alone, you should realize that I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, and this is a disclaimer. Please do not use my footage as a way to learn how to do anything with electronics, because I clearly have no idea what I am doing, and YouTube helped me learn. So I will link some videos in the description from people who actually know what they're talking about and helped me figure out this crazy world that is electronics. I've always wanted to do electronics. I've always wanted to have like fancy LEDs and like LED strips and just doing really cool stuff with my art dolls, and I finally bit the bullet and I'm taking my own advice and my own motto, and I'm doing the go for it method. Okay, I bought the stuff, I did the research, I'm doing the thing. And I'm really proud of myself for doing the thing. I've always been really intimidated by anything LEDs or electronics, and I've seen so many people do it that I was just like, you know what? If they could do it, I could do it. And so I did it, and I'm proud of myself, and you should be proud of you too. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So here he is, all baked and on his armature. I know you guys ask me so many times, how do I make my armatures? I will one day show you. The only reason I don't show you is because I am so all over the place when I make them. I am just a complete mess. I have wire just flying everywhere and ball and socket joints flying everywhere with the pliers that I use. It's everywhere. So I promise I'll show you guys soon. But once the armature is done, it is time to now build up his body. And for that, I am using quilt batting. And it's just this thing that comes in a very big sheet because it's made for quilts. And I just cut it into really long strips and I'll wrap it around the body over and over again until it's built up to how I want. Now, quilt batting is pretty readily available anywhere. Amazon, Walmart, any craft store will also carry it. So it's pretty accessible and I highly recommend it for art dolls. Now, something I always want to make sure I mention is that you never want to build up the body quite as much as you want the final result to end up, because whatever fabric you're going to add on top of the quilt batting is going to add additional thickness, and you want to make sure that you keep that in mind and so you don't end up with a body shape that you don't want. But like I always say, if you want chunk, chunk, chunk boy, you go and you get chunk, chunk, chunk boy. If you want thin, thin, thin boy, you go and get thin, thin, thin boy. Okay, we support all body shapes and sizes here. Now, he was kind of all over the place, all right? He was a little bit of mix of both, because I wanted him to be lanky, but I also wanted him to have a very fluffy neck. So I made sure to keep that in mind while I built up his body. Now, to keep the LEDs in place, I'm just using floor wire and I'm wrapping it around the neck. I'm also doing this to make sure that when he poses, that the LEDs will follow the pose with him, and so that no matter where he's looking, the LED eyes will always be as bright as possible. Now, something that I didn't show in this video because unfortunately it didn't arrive until after the video was that I got some Velcro strips to put behind his neck, so that way I would always have access to his battery for whenever it ran out. Next up is sewing, and now I will absolutely admit that this footage is even more of a hot mess than what it normally is, so I highly recommend you go and look at a previous video of how I sew my art dolls, because it will make a lot more sense there than what it does here. Because I wanted a couple different fabrics, even though they were all black, they had different lengths and textures that I wanted for him. So for his neck, I wanted a very long, very silky type of fur, just so that it was all floofy and swooshy in the wind and had that kind of vibe. But for his body, I wanted a much thinner, kind of grungier fur that kind of stuck together and clumped together. It just had a really nice, more spooky look to it. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of sectioning off his body. So I want the long fur to stop right above his arms, and so I just cut a piece of fabric that entire length, and then I'm wrapping it around his neck, make sure it's trimmed down to the length that I want it to be, not too tight around the body so it doesn't pose, but tight enough that it doesn't really look loose and it fits nicely to the body. Now for his bottom, it honestly looks like I'm making a diaper right now. But I'm just cutting the fabric around his legs to make sure that I can still sew leg fabric around, but it already has the beginning of that more clumped up fur. It's a really hot mess when I explain how I sew my art dolls. Like my whole like being and embodiment is hot mess. Like everything I do is just like, we don't know how we got here. It looks cool, the end result, but we have no idea how we got there. We threw things together, things happened, we might have cried in the corner a little bit, but we got there, and that's just the process of sewing and anything I do. But I'm also using you guys always tell me what stitch I'm using. I know it's not a ladder stitch because I use a ladder stitch later on to connect the leg fabric to the body fabric. It's not a whip stitch. I just call it a basic stitch. I just go back and forth, sewing down the center, nothing fancy pantsy. It works really well. I just make sure I use a very strong thread. I use upholstery thread, and I just go back and forth, connecting everything, and it works. I don't know what stitch it is. I wish I knew I could tell you, but again, I'm not that smart. I'm popping in for your not so daily reminder
that if you've been thinking about an art project that you've been really wanting to make, but you're too scared to do it, or you're thinking that I'm not talented enough, I don't even know where to begin. Well, hey, and it doesn't even need to be an art project. Just anything in general that you've been really thinking about, that you've wanted to do, and you're just like, God, that sounds cool, but now I can't do it. Hey, stop that. You stop that right. Look, I'm looking at you. Look at me in my eye holes, okay? You can do the thing, okay? I believe in you. You can absolutely, totally do the thing. That thing you've been thinking about, go for it, man. I believe in you. You believe in me. You guys tell me all the time, Karen, you can do the thing. You're awesome and stuff, so you're awesome. And you can do the thing. If you tell me this, you got to believe it too for yourself, okay? You can do the thing, and I absolutely believe in you, and I work with you. So go do it. Drink some water. I know you haven't. Drink it. Also, I would like to share these wonderful art pieces. Look at them. Look at them. They're so cute. Look at them. They're so awesome. Mwah. Mwah. I'd like to let you know that if you have been making an art doll or any fan art or just anything at all that you would like for me to see, please use the hashtag KP tutorials so that I can find it and I can possibly share it in my next video. Okay, now let's get back to making Mothman.
When sewing his hands and feet, what I do is I take a fabric and I cut it the entire length of his limb, and then I'll cut it so that it's nice and snug around the limb, but again, not too tight because we want to make sure that it can still pose. I will start sewing from the hands first, working my way up towards the body, and to connect the body fabric and the leg fabric together, I will use a ladder stitch. Now, normally I would be using a pet shaver as the next step to get the bulk amount of fur off and to just, you know, trim up the body, so making sure it's nice and neat and how I want it. But because his body fabric was already so thin, I ended up just going in with scissors because I didn't want to trim his floofy swooshy neck fur too much. I wish you guys could just see what I did there. I did like a back and forth, like the swoosh swoosh. But I didn't want to really cut that up too much, so I just wanted to trim up the body fur to make sure it looked a little bit nicer, a little bit neater, and that you can see the limbs a little bit better. So you make sure that you can see the knees and the elbows and ankles, make those just a little bit more prominent. So I didn't do too much trimming, just did enough to make sure that those are still prominent and you can see them. Now the next step is just to paint everything black. Black as night. It is a very, very easy paint job, and man, do I love me some easy paint jobs. So it's just painting everything in a base color of black. Now, you don't need to worry, if you're using glass cabochons, you don't need to worry about getting any paint on them, because you can just go back in with a toothpick or a needle or sculpting tool and just scrape all that off, just making sure not to scratch the glass, but it is very easy to get the paint off of that. Not so easy if you're using like resin eyes or clay eyes or anything like that, so then you might want to be a little bit careful. But when you have glass eyes, you can just be a free bird and just paint over everything. It's perfectly fine. Now, to make sure that there is a little bit of little detail showing, I am going back over everything with a really dark gray. It looks a lot lighter on camera, but it's actually really dark gray, and I'm just lightly brushing over the black just to hit all the raised edges so that all the details show. It's a very, very nice effect, and it's very easy to do, and I highly recommend it. So here is what I was talking about earlier. I'm just taking a little needle and I am just scraping all the black paint over the eyes so that they're nice and shiny again. So I wasn't sure if I even wanted to add antennae first of all to him, and then secondly, when I did decide, I wasn't sure what I wanted to use for it. I did consider like feathers or something like that, but I actually found these very poofy, fluffy pipe cleaners, and they like give the perfect little antenna vibe. And not only that, they're posable so that he can have like different expressions with his antennae, and I just thought that was a wonderful idea. And the last step is to create his wings. Now, I left this choice up to you guys because I have seen him depicted in many different ways. I've seen him depicted with bird feather wings, I've seen him depicted with bat wings, and I've seen him depicted with moth wings. And I had cool ideas for all of them, and I couldn't decide, so I let you guys decide, and it was unanimously moth wings. So here I am showing you the general process I did to get these. Now, this is something I've never done before, so please bear with me. I do enjoy the final end result, but it's a little bit all over. So I ended up just taking a cotton fabric that was kind of thick. I did consider using something like minky or faux fur, but since moth wings are generally speaking very thin, I wanted to keep that aesthetic. So I used just a thick cotton fabric to make sure that it would hold up well against the wire and it wouldn't like flop around. So once I decided the fabric and I have the general pattern that I'm going for, I just start painting, just using straight black, and I'm just using, it was actually like really good that the fabric I was using was white because it made it a lot easier to shade, and I'm just using black paint and it just going back and forth, making sure all the details that I want are in, using a ton of references. So many references of moth wings were used to get the general vibe I'm going for, but I think the end result was great. You see here that I'm actually adding an eye, is what they call it on moth wings, to act as like a distraction in the wild. I'm adding that in as white, but I do eventually go back in to add that in as red just for an extra pop of color, and I think that turned out very, very nice. I didn't have Fabri-tac at the time. I'm definitely going to have to invest in some if I plan on doing this again. So I'm just taking a little bit of Mod Podge and going over the very edges just to make sure it's nice and sealed. And then once that's sealed, I'll go and cut back any of the frayed edges that did fray and just to make sure that they have a nice clean edge again. Now, I do kind of wish I came up with a better way to do this, and I'm definitely going to have to test things in the future. But to attach the wings, what I ended up doing was just gluing the wire onto the fabric, and then I took a piece of separate fabric and just cut it so that it could cover that nasty glue blobs that I created, and so that it was a clean edge again, and I just painted that black to make sure it matched. The only reason I don't like it is because it leaves a seam between the two different fabrics, so next time I think I'm just going to find a way to make sure that it can all stay nice and seamless. But other than that, once I've finished, it is all complete, and Mothman can take to the skies.
I'm a mess. I'm a giggly mess. I want her to focus on me when I come in here. Here's pimple. I want to pop it. It's not ready yet. Don't get on me, damn you. Thank you. I appreciate your camera. That is focusing on the skeleton. That is not focusing on my face. That is still not my face. You are literally focusing on the skeleton. I am more important than he. Focus on me. I mean, give me stuff. Give me your candy. Yes, please. I'd like some Snickers or some Reese's. You know, Butterfinger. Give me candy. Thank you. So this is Alfonso Esteban. He says, hello. Oh! It's not hello. He says I'm broken. And just gonna flick that back. You're doing great, sweetie. You're doing great. Okay. What are we doing? YouTube! When are we doing it? Now! He's being a cute little loaf. I don't know if you guys can see him if I turn the camera. Don't move. No, wait, Stu. Stewie. He's like, no, I don't want to be on camera. What are you doing? You're hiding behind the curtain? But you really don't want to be seen, but you still want to be... I am a cat. Look at that tail. Stewie. There, good boy. Oh, you're gonna put. Oh, you're so cute. You're a good boy. Yeah, you're a baby boy. You know, I woke up early today because I was trying to be responsible. And be like, you're gonna get this YouTube thing done early. Guys, it's like 2 days, the day before Halloween. Not early. Not early at all. I'm very behind. I think that's good. Okay. You. That's pimple. She's always by my nose. It's just like a hill. A hill right there. It's fine. It's fine. People get pimples all the damn time. Ain't nothing but a chicken wing. What are you looking at? He's just been staring this whole time. Make it rude. No, focus on him. You got something to say, buddy? It's rude to stare. Just